Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Virtuals Events 101 webinar. My colleague and I are really looking forward to delivering today's session with you. The webinar today, Virtual Events 101, will be powered by Opsgility. And for those who don't know, we're a premier Microsoft Learning Partner as well as a Microsoft Gold Partner. So just to introduce myself, my name is Amanda Reverberry. I'm one of our customer success managers here at Opsgility. I do work heavily with Microsoft Teams on a daily basis, mainly because I focus on our virtual conference manager offering, which we'll definitely get into later on. I work with clients throughout their entire journey from discovery to agenda build and production through to delivery and post-event support. It's my driving factor to really ensure that all of my clients deliver a successful event that achieves the purpose of their event and in the most memorable way. I'm delighted to have my colleague with me today, Samantha. So without further ado, Samantha, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Embry, and I'm also a Customer Success Manager at Opsgility, focusing on our Virtual Conference Manager offering. My background is in the Las Vegas Convention Services market, specializing in large-scale conferences and luxury events. My transition to Opsgility was driven by the fact that I believe the future of events will include a large virtual component. The sheer fact that companies are able to share their conference messages with attendees all over the world in a way that is low cost and high ease makes virtual events a no-brainer. We hope to provide you with evidence of that fact as we continue with this webinar and with the additional webinars provided by Opsgility. So as you know, today is all about virtual events and really leveraging your existing event knowledge to deliver your events in an online platform. We will start with where to begin when you are thinking about a virtual event, and then take a deep dive into how to best build out your event checklist to achieve your event goals. From there, we will give insight on the common pitfalls of virtual events and how to avoid those for your conferences, and also how to maintain audience engagement in a virtual setting. Finally, we will wrap up with a virtual conference manager demonstration where we will show you all of the ways in which Opsgility can provide an event platform to wow your attendees. In the coming months, we'll be hosting an additional webinar based around hybrid events, where the team will walk us through the new norm to be and best practices on how to deliver one. And in case you missed it, please visit our website to view the recording of our previously hosted webinar, Digital Events with Microsoft Teams. So to kick us off, let's explore what events really mean at their core and how we can use that information when transitioning to the virtual world. Compelling event, virtual or in person, is about the people who interact with them. This includes attendees, presenters, event staff, and so many more different contributors. To ensure your event is compelling to all of its contributors, it is crucial that throughout the process of planning a virtual event to prioritize the following elements: your ongoing engagement strategy, the clarity of your message, and the attendee experience. All technology decisions should be made with these key elements in mind. Often, the most important thing to invest in is the storytelling skills of your presenters who will land your core message. Ensure your content has a follow-up life cycle for attendees who want to continue learning, review content, or ask questions. We will take a deeper look into each of these items later on in the presentation, but as an overall theme, remember, events are no longer a destination. They fuel connection, ongoing learning, and engagement. And speaking of engagement, it is essential that your attendees feel engaged with the content, presenters, and other attendees during your event. Here are a few quick facts that highlight the importance of keeping attendees engaged. 49% of marketers say that audience engagement is the biggest contributing factor to having a successful event. 78% of businesses that use an event application say it contributed to a positive event ROI. And 80% of people join virtual events for educational purposes. The next biggest reason to join virtual events is networking. So that second largest reason that people are attending events is to network with other attendees. Keeping your audience engaged is very important. We will deep dive into the ways in which we can leverage your audience to ensure engagement in just a few slides. Now that we understand why engagement is critical to the success of an event, the first step in achieving that goal would be to define the purpose of your event. Coming from a Marriott background, I'm a big fan of how they have categorized events into 7 encompassing purposes. To celebrate. The event is to commemorate a milestone or an accomplishment. Some examples of these would be an incentive trip for your top sellers or an anniversary party for your company. Keeping people excited and engaged for the work that they have been doing. To decide, the event is to focus on meaningful dialogue so an outcome or direction can be initiated. Let's say you're an association who changes its board of directors every year. The purpose of your event might be to host a debate and have attendees decide at the event who will be elected for the next year. To educate, the event is to impart knowledge. The attendees learn new things or acquire new skills. Opsgility actually started as a training platform for Microsoft certification prep classes. So attendees using Opsgility were provided with education materials in order to take those Microsoft certification exams. Educational conferences are one of the most popular conferences in the market today, and the content provided and the presenters selected really are key to the event success. To ideate, the event is to innovate or produce new ideas, new ways of thinking or doing things. An example of this would be if you're planning an upcoming change in market strategy and you want to pull people in from all areas of the company to hear their opinion on which way they think the company should go. This purpose is really dependent upon engagement of attendees and their ability to share their ideas with one another and key stakeholders. To network, the event is to meet and get to know new people. Did your company recently hire on a completely new department and you want your whole team to come together and get to know one another? Are you a part of a sourdough bread making fan club that started during quarantine and now you want to connect outside of a blog post? This is a very social type of event where attendee interaction and relationship building is key. To produce, the event calls for people to collaborate towards a specific goal or develop a specific output. For example, there's a hackathon where all of the coders on your team are trying to crack this one bug on your website, and you want them to be able to share the progress one another has made and collaborate on the ways in which to make sure that happens. To promote, the event is to introduce a new offering, a product or service, or promote a new idea or message. A great example of this would be every time Tesla drops a new line of vehicles. They put on an event to show off their product and really get people excited about the upcoming launch to market. And finally, to clarify, this is not one and done situation. You could have an event where you celebrate, educate, and network. However, understanding how those purposes differ and how to best accomplish each one of those purposes individually is key to successfully executing your event. Hey, Amanda, now that we've explored what events really mean at their core, in your experience, where should we begin when planning a virtual event for the very first time?
Sounds like a simple question, and it's a good question, Samantha, but yet it's so big at the same time. I think that could be overwhelming for some people. And so I think the first place you want to start is really by just looking at event scenarios overall, and what type of events are there really? So here, excuse me, you could see a breakdown into 5 overarching types of event scenarios. Firstly, there's webinars. And so webinars are really great for individual events and a series of events. I think they can both be open or moderated and live or pre-recorded. I think webinars are really great for your shorter events. If you're thinking to do more of a full day event or a multi-day event, then you might look at the next scenario, which is our virtual conferences. And virtual conferences, those can be good for multi-track scenarios. For example, maybe an organization-wide event where each department has their own track with dedicated sessions to those departments. And of course, those can be moderated Q&A as well, which tends to be the smoothest way to run those types of events. So that way you can monitor and filter questions that come in and just really determine what's asked out loud for the presenters. Then there are online communities. And these are great for ongoing engagement. For example, like higher education, that might be for a few months, a quarter long event, or even great for continuous learning. So Opsgility, we even use our virtual conference manager platform for our Skill Me Up Academy, which is a place for delivering live training, receiving that, and then continuous learning on the platform post-training. Then there are leadership events or town halls. These are definitely one-to-many type conferences with a managed Q&A and tend to be your high-profile events, highly branded, and sometimes even destination events, even though it's in person, virtual. And then lastly, there are public broadcasts. So these are great for a very broad, widespread audience and great for global outreach. These can be situations where maybe you want to stream your event to multiple platforms across multiple locations. And so with all this information, you should be able to narrow down what scenario type your event would fall into, which now brings us to the next step, which is defining the event team. And so defining the event team is definitely an important and highly valuable step in this process. And the essential piece, pieces of an event team should encompass all of your organizers, your producers, and your presenters. So an organizer would be the event host. These are the people who build the event, they set permissions accordingly, curate the event links, and even manage the event. Producers are those who are responsible for delivering the event the day of. They're the ones who start the sessions, stop the sessions, sometimes responsible for recording. And in certain scenarios, they are the ones who curate and deliver advanced production. And that could be for keynotes, high profile events, etc. There are some events where the organizer and the producer might be the same person or the same people, and that can depend on a number of things, whether it's the size of the event, the amount of bandwidth, even just the availability of the team. Then there's presenters, and those are people who create and deliver the content in the event. Sometimes presenters can be moderators and moderate the Q&A, but we always advise having designated moderators, which then brings me to the recommended ads of the event team. Moderators, in my opinion, are highly, highly recommended. I wish mandated, because they're so essential. They really can be people who are strictly just dedicated to help facilitate the Q&A and give direction and guidance to attendees for navigation to sessions. And I think just most importantly, they allow presenters to just keep 100% of their focus and their attention on delivering their presentations. And then lastly, definitely not least, is our IT admins. And in the virtual world and virtual events, IT admins are extremely valuable. They just ensure that the network and service are healthy, they're connected, and everything's running smoothly. And they're a huge help when it comes to attendees who might have technical support issues, or even presenters who might have technical support issues. So overall, by creating this event team, and then of course, before understanding the event scenario of where your event falls into, it's now time to really just envision the conference overall. And so, excuse me, envisioning the conference overall, just that entails a number of things, including the type of event, how you would like your attendees to experience and interact with the presenters, and then what level of production that is required for that. So if you see here on the slide, you want to think of what your event type is. So is it a one-time single event, a series of events, or maybe it's an online community? This step should be easier to determine at this point, knowing that we went over the event scenarios a few minutes ago. So then you want to envision the conference in the sense of envisioning what you want your attendees to experience, whether it's their experience overall or how they interact with presenters. So did you want to give them a more interactive, collaborative type of feel with a two-way discussion, or more of maybe a high-level keynote event with a managed Q&A, all chat-based, and really just ignoring all background noise so there's no disruptions in the event? And then finally, what video production will be required for that type of event and experience? Sometimes a webcam and microphone will suffice, and that's all you need. And in other situations, you may need all the bells and whistles with the production company to include a host in a studio who's speaking to a panel virtually over monitor and stream that out to attendees. At the bottom, you can see there's a number of event examples, but we'll dive into that a bit later on in this webinar. So I guess now that we understand what could be done virtually, it's important to take all that information and apply it to your event. Obviously, it's an abundance of information and a lot of moving pieces, which can make it easy to miss an important detail. So Samantha, in your event experience, what do clients need to know to really create an efficient roadmap to build their virtual event?
Great question, Amanda. We start with the timeline, because the timeline is really the most crucial aspect for your virtual conferences. While virtual events do not require years of booking out venues or planning multiple tastings for catering selections, there are many virtual aspects that need to be secured instead. So let's start with the 20 to 16 weeks prior area, what we call your initial roadmap. Obviously, this timeline can be much greater if you already know you're going virtual months in advance, but as a general rule, this is where we see planners starting to put their conferences together. This is when you really are getting serious about planning a virtual event. You should have your purpose nailed down and have begun to do research on which virtual event partner you want to utilize and which you would like to select by the end of this phase. You also have your target audience in mind, a rough budget to spend, and an overview of your agenda. Everything in the initial roadmap stage is still high level, but you have a rough draft per se on how your ideal event will go. Moving on to the extended planning phase from 16 to 8 weeks pre-event. This is where you do some of your larger and more important details really nailed down. Who do you want to have as your main keynote speakers? What topics would you like to cover during breakout? How would you like your attendees to network? How can you highlight your sponsors? How do you want to incorporate your branding? These are all important questions to ask your virtual event partner to make sure your vision can come to life for your attendees. The next phase would be the focus phase from 8 to 4 weeks pre-event. This is where you have nailed down your presenters and agenda. Your attendees are starting to register and get excited about the event. You have determined the run of show for your sessions, i.e. if they're Teams live events or Teams meeting, where to include breaks and time to network. All of these items are not solid, but the build can begin for your virtual event partner so that your conference can come to life and you are able to view the experience as an attendee would towards the end of this phase. Moving along to the final details and tying up loose ends phase from 4 to 1 week pre-event. Your agenda is set and your virtual conference platform is built. Attendees have been able to register for sessions and browse the catalog of content you will be providing. Your speakers and moderators will attend training on how best perform in a virtual event and how to easily access the event day of. This phase is really just making sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, and minimal changes should be made here. For the moment of truth, the day of execution, go time phase. This is where everything goes live and your hard work has paid off. You and your support team will be executing all of your events, fielding any support issues from attendees, and ensuring your presenters are taken care of. You should be following your run of show for each step of the day, making it easy to know exactly where you need to be at what time. And finally, the feedback and follow-up phase from 1 day to 1 week post-event. This is where you collect reporting from your virtual event partner, send out post-event surveys if you didn't include that on your last day agenda, and debrief with all of your partners, sponsors, and presenters. Collecting feedback is extremely important on understanding what went right and those areas that might have missed the mark for attendees. Provide your attendees with access to recordings of the sessions so they can see sessions they missed or rewatch sessions they really enjoyed. Now that your timeline has been established, we can move on to understanding the goals and objectives for your event. Remember a few slides back when we discussed the extreme importance of understanding your event's purpose? This is where that definition really takes shape for your event. After you understand what the purpose of your event is, you can then start thinking about what your goals are. Think of your goals as non-negotiable. What is important to you, your company, and the stakeholders? Who exactly are the stakeholders and what do they want to accomplish? Do you want to ensure attendees leave with a certification? Or maybe 70% of your attendees engage with your hashtag on Twitter? Whatever is important to you, define that here. From there, we move on to objectives. Now, objectives are even more detailed and focused than goals, so I like the SMART method when defining these. Be specific. There is no use in setting a generic objective because it won't suit you personally. However, if you adapt the objective to apply to what you need, it'll be much more valuable. Of course, you want the event to go well, but isn't everyone in the office thinking the same thing? Is it quantifiable? For instance, the example objective of selling more product after a product launch. You can measure this by the amount of units sold. Having a measurable goal allows you to identify when exactly it has been reached, i.e. when you desire, what you desire at the end result. The point of an objective is to challenge and motivate yourself to complete that piece of work. If you were to set an objective that's too high, it can cause stress. So are your event objectives actually achievable and in reach? Likewise, if your objectives are too easy, you will likely feel that you didn't do enough or there was something lacking from your event. Set yourself a reasonable target. Is it possible and is it meaningful to your event? Setting an objective to have 10 Hollywood celebrity keynotes sounds great in theory, but one, is that something that you're actually able to secure? And two, is that actually relevant to the event you're putting on? And deadlines, not something we like, but something most of us need. Selecting objectives that will keep you on your timeline is not only smart, but will also make the planning process easier and less stressful. Defining your goals and objectives using these examples will aid you in completing your roadmap for a successful event. And while an online conference is cost-effective for not only the organizers, but also the attendees, because you don't have the cost of the venue, travel, hotel, food, and other overhead. The same budget could be allocated towards getting better speakers or leading experts from the industry. It can also help attract a bigger audience. It is important to establish a budget for your event, taking into account that you do not have the same hard costs as an in-person event. Similarly to an in-person event, the majority of your budget will go to your hosting platform. Essentially, a virtual event platform is your convention hall for attendees to engage and attend sessions. The second largest cost will be your speakers and moderators. It is important to secure great presenters who are sharing relevant and engaging content with attendees, so a large portion of your budget will be allocated here. In addition, when having the resources to market your event to the right people will also be important. We will go into that in a few slides, so we'll just touch on it here. And finally, how are you able to leverage your sponsors and sell packages? Sponsors can still be a part of your conference, and using them creatively will help both your budget and the overall look and feel of your event. There are some really amazing ways in which sponsors can be showcased in the Virtual Conference Manager, which leads me to my next point. A great virtual event requires an excellent virtual conference platform. This is where Opsgility's Virtual Conference Manager comes in. With a flexible conference design for your attendees to have a fixed or personalized schedule, the ability to network using speed networking or individual chat areas, to browse an Expo Hall to highlight your sponsors and exhibitors. The VCM customization options allows you to display speaker bios, headshots, and social media links in one dedicated area, all while linking to corresponding sessions. Not to mention the accessibility aspect of the VCM, as we are one of the very few platforms in the market who are WCAG compliant. Amanda is going to take us through a demonstration of the VCM a little bit later on to show you some of the amazing features we have. But Opsgility lets you leverage the power of Microsoft Teams to deliver a highly engaging conference for your attendees. Next is marketing. So a couple slides back, I mentioned that most companies allocate between 10 to 20% of their marketing budget to virtual events. This is no longer means printing signage, registration booklets, flyers, etc., but rather allocating those funds towards expanding your audience reach. Like previously stated, virtual events have very few limitations to reaching attendees from all across the world. The key at this point, though, is to how to find out attendees to connect with your purpose, goals, and objectives. Of course, utilizing your existing company website and social media areas to display conference details is a great place to start. Create a custom hashtag on Twitter to get the conversation going prior to your event and hopefully reach more individuals than you previously connected with before. Reach out to your previous event attendees. Have you had this conference in person for the last 10 years? Great. Take all 10 years and reach out with the information about your virtual event. The barriers to attend are not as high as in-person events, so you're likely to attract more repeat attendees than previously. In addition, if this is your first year going virtual, expand out from what you typically think your attendee profile would look like. Again, convenience is key in virtual spaces, and attendees who you might not have thought of would come to your in-person event will now join online. Make sure the purpose of your event is clear. You will attract more attendees with a clear purpose than with a general goal. Why should attendees choose your conference over another? And finally, I'll mention convenience for a third time because it is truly one of the biggest selling points of a virtual event. Attendees can join from home, work, their kid's soccer game, and still take away the information provided. Not to mention the environmental impacts that virtual events have for reduced air travel, car travel, and hotel bed turnover. I mentioned this in a previous slide, but virtual events are more accessible, thus broadening your reach for attendance even further. And so what exactly will set your event apart from others? There are a few things you can do to make sure your event stands out amongst the crowd. First and foremost is content. Without quality content, even a great speaker will miss the mark. You and your event team really need to nail down what it needs to be accomplished in each keynote and session in order to create content that is engaging and interesting for attendees. Next would be great speakers to execute your quality content. Virtual presentation style is very different than in-person presentations, and your speakers should be comfortable with those differences. In a virtual event, presenters do not have that visual feedback from the audience to fuel their presentations. They need to rely on their content and their delivery style to make their sessions one to remember. And to go alongside that, every great speaker has an even better moderator in the background. A moderator is an extra set of eyes, ears, and hands managing the virtual logistics and audience so the speaker can focus on content and ensure a smooth session. Presenters should not have to think about anything else other than showing up, good audio video quality, and delivering their content. Moderators improve attendee engagement, minimize load on technical support staff, and provide event polish with a pre-designed introduction and closing messages in large-scale events. Another area that can set your event apart is engagement. How attendees engage with the presenters and with each other is extremely important to make your event one of a kind. We will deep dive into this in a few slides, so I won't talk further in this area. As mentioned in the last slide, ease of access is also key to set your event apart. Navigating the virtual world is hard enough on a daily basis, so having a virtual event platform that is intuitive and user-friendly for all technical levels of attendees will make the attendee experience that much better. And finally, would be your special sessions. Are you wanting to do some type of virtual clothing drive for a community service project? Or are you wanting to bring in a fitness instructor to kick off each morning with 30 minutes of yin yoga to really relax and focus your attendees for a full day of content? Maybe you want to create a first-time attendees reception where newcomers can network and chat over a virtual happy hour time slot. Whatever is special to your attendees, what are the ways that you can incorporate that into your event? And this really great graph kind of shows what aspects are important to other planners. So what does success mean to you? If you're able to nail down the areas in this graph, then you're on the right track. Get creative and understand the areas that are important to you and your stakeholders. Success does not have to be measured by quantitative results. Success can mean anything you want it to, being a feeling, a memory, or just the sheer fact that you made it through your first virtual event without a power outage in your area. However, no matter how experienced and seasoned an event team can be, we all have had a hiccup here or there. Things happen, as we know. That said, there are a few things that we can control ahead of time to avoid some of the most common issues people face with digital events. Amanda, in your experience, what are the most common mistakes and how can those be avoided?
Samantha, that's such a true point. I don't know if there'll ever be a time where there isn't a hiccup or something that happens during the run of the show, but there are definitely common pitfalls that I think we can prepare ahead of time to make sure we avoid those ones at least. And so I will spend just a little bit of time on this slide because I think it's so key and it's so important for a successful event. And so time to prepare is essential. You want to think and work proactively and give yourself plenty of time to prepare for this event. Just like the ones in person, dry runs, rehearsals, training, all that, days leading up to the event and weeks leading up to the event are just as important in the virtual world. Even more so in the virtual world, you don't want to take anybody's, it'll be all right on the day. It really won't unless you make it so, right? And so be aware that you can't change the world, what's happening in the world. You can't change sometimes where you live, the finicky services and the network health there. Some geographical areas are just not the same as others. So really your aim in all things should just be to achieve an optimal experience. And so communication, firstly, is key. Whether that's amongst those on the event planning team or to the attendees on how to join the event, when to log in, what functionalities or even limitations they might experience on the platform, or communication with the presenters. So when they have to have their content done by, when will rehearsals be, even how to just present on the platform. And then comes to your moderators to ensure that they know how to field the Q&A and that the presenters are aware when those moderators are going to ask the questions out loud. So all this does lead me to the next bullet, which is training. Training is just as key as communication. It really is the key to the fluidity of the event. And so it's pivotal to ensure that all presenters, moderators, and hosts really are trained not only on the platform, but also on how to log in and the controls of the system, since every system or every platform is so different, what to expect the day of, and really just ensure that all parties are on the same page for the run of show. Just like in person, rehearsals virtually is so important. Running through session by session and allowing presenters to perform dry runs of their content is so valuable. So walking through that run of show with everyone involved really ensures confidence going into the event. And then lastly, it's just giving enough time for the little details that make such a big impact. So for example, branding on the platform and even in the content. Registration, just to ensure professional and aesthetically pleasing registration that's easy for attendees, but then also gives the planners enough time to make sure that they're uploaded to the platform and make a good registration end date. So it gives attendees time to log in early, make sure they can log in successfully. That way, day of, it's a smooth transition. as with most things in life, really, preparation is just the key to success. And so presentation style is a great way to avoid common pitfalls as well. And I think this is a really common issue that, again, you might not think of if it's your first virtual event. I don't think a lot of people realize that presenting virtually might be more difficult for some and just different for others. It's super important to prepare presenters that they might not be able to see or even hear the audience in some deliveries, essentially just staring at their computer. And so again, allowing time for dry runs and hopping on a call with all of your presenters to let them rehearse with you and really just get comfortable with that type of environment. And so not only are rehearsals with the event team and producers essential, but you could even practice as a presenter on your own. And so one of the bullets in this slide here is something that mentions PowerPoint presenter coach. So PowerPoint has its own presenter coach tool, which helps you really prepare in private to give more effective presentation. It basically evaluates your pace, your pitch, your use of filler words like informal speech, euphemisms, sensitive terms, and really just detects if you're either too wordy or if you're reading exactly off your slide. A huge tip that I would give is that nearly every single conference we deliver in, we are always asked by every attendee, will we have access to these slides? Do we get this content? And so I think preparing ahead of time with the organizer to ensure where do I upload my content, what format do I need it in, the final version of this content, so that way attendees do have that access. And so really just this presentation style is a huge piece to ensure a successful event on the presentation end. I think that brings us to content quality, which is what we're on right now. And so I think in person, really, seasoned presenters might be able to engage the audience quite easily, whether it's seeing body language or interacting with them physically, right, and walking through the aisles of the audience, etc. But behind a computer, without that in-person interaction, it's even more important that the quality of your content is interesting, it's concise, it's aesthetically appealing, and maybe even think about bringing in humor when applicable, or something just to break up the content if it's a long presentation. Which you can see here, shorter sessions, it's definitely important to make sure that your session, if it's going to be an hour long, it's at least broken up within, it's not just you speaking to a screen for an hour. On the engagement piece, it can be a challenge virtually. So using things like polls or surveys or even trivia, just to engage the audience, keep them in tune, just keep them alert to what you're presenting will make a huge, huge difference. And then service and network health. This is definitely a new item to add to the checklist, I think, for a majority of people who haven't run an event virtually. So ensuring your service is strong and your network is healthy are key factors to check in on prior to the event. In some situations, for example, a client who is running an event that lives in a location with finicky service, we would suggest to them to go back and maybe get hardwired Wi-Fi. So that way we can avoid any drops or glitches or freezes. And it's not just the service of the presenter that you need to be aware of, but it's also of the producer. So if you're streaming from a production software or an RCMP link, or even if your computer is just reaching its maximum bandwidth, which I could definitely vouch for, it's really important that ahead of time, you're aware of that. And whether it's reconfiguring your workplace or moving to a different location just for that event, can really help avoid these glitches. Networking issues and glitches and freezes, that can really make the attendee experience drop. So just prepare ahead of time with that to really avoid that from happening. And then event support. And so event support is so important to have. I know Samantha can attest, our whole team of support is just essential for every successful event we've ever delivered. Whether it's your Wi-Fi dropping and someone has to step in, or you're helping a presenter who's live, but there's an audience member who has a question, needs nurturing, you don't want to be late in responding. So for those reasons and so many more, ensuring support is scheduled during delivery days ahead of time is so, so important. I think this table here is really helpful as well for support. And so if you fill in the table with key points of contact in your organization, it's clear for everybody to see. And so all roles should be identified for large scale events, small scale as well, but definitely for your large scale ones. And that could be simplified for the smaller webinars or one-time events. Review this in coordination with existing IT support desk and those processes that you might have internally. And then this table ultimately, I think, should just be shared amongst all parties. So that way, not only are you all on the same page, but then everyone knows who to go to for what type of support is needed. So I guess now that we've covered all the essentials to prepare to really help avoid all these common pitfalls, it's time to start designing your event schedule. So Samantha, with your experience, can you just walk us through that whole experience of designing your event schedule and really the best practices around it?
Absolutely. Thanks, Amanda. So the first step in defining your event schedule is to choose the format of each of your sessions. Microsoft Teams provides two great ways to showcase your content to attendees depending on the size of the session and how would you like attendees to interact with the presenters. Microsoft just recently released a webinar function for events, which we at Opsgility are very excited about. The webinar platform will allow for a middle ground between a Teams live event and a Teams meeting to give us slightly more control for attendees without interrupting content for presenters. Again, this is a brand new functionality that Microsoft has just released. So for the sake of this webinar, we will focus on the Teams live events and Teams meetings only. For your keynote sessions, most events utilize Teams live events to allow a maximum attendance and to highlight the presenters and their content in a visually appealing way. Teams live events can hold up to 20,000 attendees who are able to ask questions via a Q&A chat function. Attendees do not have the ability to utilize a webcam and/or microphone, as that functionality is reserved solely for your presenters. This allows the presenters to focus on their content delivery without the interruption of attendees for questions during the presentation. A single Teams live event can last up to 16 hours, and you are able to run up to 50 concurrent Teams live events at the same time. Moving on to your breakout sessions, most events utilize Teams meetings to allow a more free-flowing attendee to presenter interaction. These meetings are made for smaller and more focused discussions on specific topics, as there is a limit of attendance at 300. All participants of a Teams meeting can utilize their webcam and/or microphone to ask questions and/or interact with the presenter. These meetings do offer more functionality for whiteboards, discussions, together modes, and other engagement items, which Amanda will touch on in a later slide. One area that can often be overlooked, but is crucial to keeping your event on track, are the breaks. Breaks are very important to keep audience engaged and to fight screen fatigue. There are some creative ways in which breaks can be utilized for those attendees who do not want to step away from the conference, so we will cover those here. Hold slides. So hold slides can be very creative and a highly impactful area to display during your Teams live event breaks. This area can be utilized for sponsor recognition, housekeeping notes like closed captions, session reminders, etc., music and countdown timers to let attendees know when to be back, as well as an opportunity to highlight upcoming events that you are planning. Hold slides can wear so many hats and should not be overlooked when taking a break at a Teams live event. One special area specific to the VCM are individual activities. These show up on an attendee's schedule like a keynote or a breakout, but have links to surveys, trivia, social media, and much more. You as an event planner can choose what you would like your attendees to do during this break and tailor these individual activities to fit your needs. Finally, your attendees could use break times to network or visit the Expo Hall within the VCM, which I will now go into detail for both. Networking during a conference is crucial in some form for optimal attendee engagement. Teams has a channel built into their platform that allows attendees to share content, chat with each other individually, post on conference-wide discussion boards, and much more. The picture you see in the bottom right of your screen is an example of an individual activity that attendees can have on their schedule. The link you see takes attendees directly to a separate sponsored Teams channel for attendees to interact with Navivo sponsors. This is a great visibility area for your sponsors, as well as for attendees to have those one-on-one conversations like they would in an in-person event. In addition, the VCM has a feature called speed networking, which is, funny enough, very similar to speed dating. Attendees are randomly placed with each other to discuss a variety of topics for a limited time. Amanda is going to touch on this in a little bit, so I won't cover too much more on that, but let's move to the Expo Hall function within the VCM. 87% of event organizers opt for a virtual event platform that have a virtual sponsorship booth capability. Luckily for you all, Opsgility's Virtual Conference Manager does have a virtual Expo Hall area. This is one of my favorite areas within the VCM, simply due to the fact that it's so easily customizable for each sponsor or exhibitor. With multiple layout designs, exhibitors can creatively display images, videos, files, announcements, social media links, and chat areas all in one easy to find and visually appealing location. The Expo Hall can be sorted using sponsor tier levels, really giving your high-level sponsors an executive feel over your standard exhibitors. These tiers are customizable to the lingo you have used within your selling process. The Expo Hall really gives your attendees the opportunity to engage with vendors and their content in a way that would not happen without this feature. And as you know, engagement is always key. Finally, attendees can access content easily and keep organized as sponsors and exhibitors have their own specific areas to share this information. If an attendee only wants to visit a certain expo booth, they can do that. If they want to browse them all, they can do that as well. The Expo Hall is very user-friendly for both exhibitors and attendees. Amanda, I know you're really excited to show us all the ways to keep attendees engaged. What are some of your favorite ways to do that through Teams and the VCM?
I definitely am. I think everyone knows this. I absolutely love these parts of not just Teams alone, but Teams and Virtual Conference Manager both. So excited to get into it. There's for networking, there's a few things. I know Samantha touched on one of them earlier, but firstly, just Teams meeting mixers. So we can have Teams meetings essentially as networking. Now, whether that's topic specific, maybe it's just general networking, it's really up to you, but they support up to 300 people. And you could see in the scene here, the image here, that there's together mode, which makes it even more fun, putting people in an auditorium environment or maybe more of like a coffee shop feel. And so it's a really casual but inviting type of mixer. And then there's speed networking, which is a really cool concept. And we built this into VCM, which again, it utilizes the power of Teams, but brings in some other cool conference features like this. So speed networking, I think, is a great feature for those who might be a bit timid to network. It really helps them do that quite easily. Essentially what it is a time frame set where you go to this networking tab, and I'll show you this, and you could pick a topic to network on, and you can write a little description about yourself. And when you press join, it will pair you with either one other person or up to 9 other people. So the small groups of 2 or 10 randomly. So anybody else who's in that environment, you'll get randomly paired with them. And then you just join into a Teams meeting. We advise for 5 minutes, but of course, if it's good conversation, you could stay in longer. So like I said, it's just a really good type of networking for those who are just a bit scared of the concept. Then we have ways of engagement through Poly. And so Poly is just an application that we can utilize on Teams, and it's a great application for engagement. So Poly has polls, and of course, polls can spark instant engagement. They have real-time results visible for everybody to see, which you can see in the images below. And you have the ability to build the poll in real time during a meeting, or you can build it ahead of time and just launch the poll when you're ready for it to be released to the audience. Likewise, Poly has trivia, which I know the team and I have even done just to play around, which is such a fun activity if you just want to break up the day, or maybe you do this during lunch or however you'd like to set that up. It's great for a social hour, really, right? And you could test general knowledge of people and learn more about people on your team. So you could choose from a variety of categories, preset categories, whether it's animals or TV shows of the 90s or things of that sort. And you get a certain amount of seconds to answer each question, and you can see the leadership standings in real time. So again, just a really fun activity to get everybody talking to each other. And then we also have Forms. So Forms is another application to use on Teams, and Forms is so great for surveys. And we've used this with a number of our clients for surveys and evaluations during the conference or even post-conference. You can create the surveys in real time or again, ahead of time, and you can use them to even just collaborate with your team, but you see results in real time, and you could collect those results and those responses and easily just export them to Excel so that everybody can analyze those results. And then lastly, one of my favorite ones, I think it's probably a lot of people's favorite ones, is the Microsoft Whiteboard feature. And so you can see in this small little image or video here, Basically, if you think of a whiteboard in person, now bring that in virtually, that's what this is. So everybody in their team's meeting in this really collaborative group can work on this virtual whiteboard in real time together. We could all edit the same document at the same place, add Post-its, work on a PowerPoint, a presentation, all this in one spot in real time. It's great for brainstorming, collaboration. It's just an awesome tool right in your team's meeting. And so I think without further ado, I would love to just go ahead and show you a demo, a quick demo of our Virtual Conference Manager platform. So let me just pull that up for you guys now. Okay. Perfect. So this is an example of our Virtual Conference Manager platform. And so we just went to a simple web browser and you just signed in with usually the email that you register with, and you're brought to our Virtual Conference Manager platform. So this landing page is totally customizable. It can be any image you would like. We could even have a video running in the center of the screen. It's really customizable to your preference. At the bottom here, we can include your branding. So we can include logos as well, even just straight on the landing page. From here on the right, you see your schedule. And so if it's a multi-day event, you could just click the right arrow, get to the next day. And I think Samantha might have touched on this earlier, but this VCM allows you to have both an open conference, a fixed conference, or almost a hybrid of both. And so this situation, we gave the keynote session, we wanted everybody to attend, everybody to have that on their schedule automatically. Every other session that we're producing, we were saying, you know what, everyone go ahead and personalize your own agenda. Go build your own agenda. So we have that awesome feature where if I press the sessions tab here or here, you're brought to see all the sessions that are available during this event. And so you can search for sessions through a text space, by day, time, and speaker. We even have different types of filters like label, audience, and level. And so you can label your sessions. I want to see all of the breakouts happening. And that will filter all of the breakouts happening in the event. Likewise, if it was maybe an organization-wide event and we can do it by audience, and I want to filter by all the sales, all sessions relevant to sales. So it's just a great way to filter everything happening in the event. And if I want to add to my agenda, this looks like a great breakout. I want to learn more about it. I can see the speakers. I want to add it to my schedule. I press register. That will automatically go add to my schedule. And so if I go back to my schedule, you will see that will be added to Monday, May 3rd at 10 a.m. Central. Right here. It's as simple as that. The speakers, I'll get to the speakers tab in a second, but we have a page just to highlight your speakers, but you could also tag them and include them to every session on the agenda, which is aesthetically really nice. And you could even click on them to learn more about who they are and any social media links. Then the Expo Hall, I know Samantha touched on this in a slide earlier, but we can customize tiers. You can have multiple tiers, customize what those tiers are, or just not even have tiers at all, up to you. From here, every sponsor or exhibitor would have their own logos, and the logos are clickable, and that would bring you into their booth. But firstly, you'll see that there's buttons underneath Opsgility and Microsoft says calendar. That means that this sponsor and this vendor are hosting their own sessions. They're going to run their own sessions during the event, and usually that's just during breaks, maybe lunch. And so if I click it, you could see what sessions they're running and when they are. If I want to see their booth, I click on their logo and it brings me into their booth. We do have a number of booth layouts, and of course you can do that by maybe the top tier get the biggest layout, and then the smallest tier gets the least amount of space in their booth, right? And so this is just one example. We have videos, chat functions, handouts, etc. And this really cool feature of scan your badge. So if you think of, if I were to go to Microsoft Inspire, right now I have my badge, I might scan it every time I go to a booth. It's the same thing virtually. And so if I press that, it gives me the option to fill out my information and send that to this sponsor here so that they have that. I can just go back to the Expo Hall or back to the conference. Just quickly, one other booth layout so you can just get a gist. Microsoft's, and that's a different tier, so I chose to do a different layout. And this one has a top banner and just some videos in their own sessions here. Then the last two are just the speakers page, and again, it's just a place to highlight your speakers of the event. And so it can have headshots, job titles, bios, and any social media links, not just LinkedIn. It could be Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. And if you click on more speaker info, you could read their bio there and any sessions they're presenting in. And then lastly is the speed networking tool that we've both been speaking about, and that's right here. So it does give you some instructions. You could pick your topic, and a great feature is if I wanted to network on that topic now, this is telling me I can't because it's only available at this time, which is great to ensure that you're driving traffic to your sessions when they're supposed to be had. And so that's really all the demo that I want to show for today. So I'm going to give it right back to you, Samantha, for really any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Amanda. I know we had one question about if the recording would be available at a later date. So just wanted to make everybody aware that yes, we will provide the recording on our website in the coming weeks. So keep your eye out for that. And if you have any more questions, please put them in the chat. Doesn't look like we have any more questions coming through. So we would like to thank you so much for coming to our webinar. We hope it was productive and informative for you. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us at sales@opsgility.com and hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you, everyone.